So last year I made a 15th century kirtle and it turned out fantastic. I love it. It is so comfortable, it is flattering, it is so supportive, and just one of my favorite things I've made so far. However, it is very clearly a historical piece. You look at it and there is no mistaking it for modern wear. And while I absolutely adore dressing up in historical fashion, there are places where you don't necessarily want to look like you stepped off the page of a 15th century manuscript. So for this project, I went full history bounding, taking the elements of a traditional kirtle that I love and making it a bit more modern. The two changes that I made were making the length shorter and changing up the neckline. In the 15th century, a wide, almost off-the-shoulder neckline was one of the fashionable styles. We do still see this to some extent on modern clothes, but I knew that was going to be one of the easiest ways to modernize this kirtle a bit. So I raised the neckline to be closer to a more modern bateau neckline. This took a couple of mock-ups to figure out since it involved changing more angles than I originally thought. Once I was happy with it though, I cut out my kirtle pieces from a medium weight linen. Like with a medieval kirtle, I cut my front and back pieces with straight lines, and then triangular gores will be added after to add flare and prevent bias pull. All the pieces are marked along the pattern lines and then cut with desired seam allowance. The gores get cut out using the hip measurement on the front and back pieces as a guide for the length and angle. I basted the gores onto the back pieces before stitching them down with a running back stitch for speed. And because I know people will ask, I sprained my thumb this summer while helping to build a chicken coop. Yes, my life is a side quest. Then I joined the two back pieces together. The center back is sewn with a back stitch for strength, and then I switched to a running back stitch along the gores. And then I felled down the seams so far. It does make the process easier finishing seams as you go when there's not a ton of fabric to wrangle. Then I joined the front to the back at the side seams and the shoulder seams. Then I tried it on and realized that I had a funky thing going on. Instead of sitting nicely and flaring out properly, we were both buckling in and puckering out at the same time. I messed around with things for a while, asked other sewing friends online, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And then I realized I should turn to history, specifically my own history. So I pulled out my first kirtle to look at the angles of the gores and discovered that I had cut these gores way wider than I should have. On a floor-length kirtle, it might not have been so bad, but on a T-length dress, this was going to be way more noticeable. Also, I had accidentally set them higher on the dress than my original kirtle, so it wasn't giving the flattering A-line flare that it was supposed to. In the end, I realized that all the gores were just too wide to work with as they were, so as beautiful as all that footage you just watched was, I had to seam rip it all and cut every gore down by a whole lot. I also dropped where they sat on the body so that they flared properly at the hips rather than near the waist where I originally had them. Once the gores fiasco was sorted out and everything sat right on the body, it was time to move on to the neck facing. When you're doing any kind of lacing, it's important to have at least 2 layers of fabric along where the grommets or eyelets will sit to prevent the fabric from pulling or tearing. I started out using the same technique as last time, adding a strip along both center front edges on the right side, flipping it under to the wrong side, and felling it down. And then I hit yet another snag. It felt like snags were the theme of this project, because when I tried it on again, the center front wasn't sitting right. It was too big and not supportive enough and just off. I kept trying to think of funky ways to sort it out, ignoring the simple solution that was right in front of my face. I thought about doing a button closure instead of lacing, and tried sewing the front together in a way that would allow for an overlap to button it closed, and tried it on and went, oh, thanks, I hate it. The way I had to stitch up the placket was not flattering to either me or the overall design of the dress. So I once again threw the dress into the UFO pile before realizing the answer was painfully simple. Trim down the center front and stitch on the facing like you'd originally planned. Duh. So I did that, and we were back on track. With the facing finally on, I could finally hem down the collar edge. This is just a simple turned hem, felled down. I still wanted to keep the lacing style of historical kirtles, so it was time to mark out a bunch of eyelets and sew them in. I poked a hole in each eyelet with an awl so as not to weaken the strength of the fabric. Then I did a few quick stitches all the way around before going back around and filling in the eyelet. And while I started out sewing the eyelets with my larger needle, I switched back to my tiny number 10 sharp, and it made quite a difference in the size and finesse of the eyelets. At long last, we've come to the sleeves. I used the exact same sleeve pattern as my 15th century kirtle, and yes, I did make sure to quickly baste in a mock-up sleeve to double check the fit. The seams of the sleeves got stitched together with little back stitches for strength and pressed before felling down the seam. I picked up a handy new sleeve pressing board at a thrift store over the summer, and I was so excited to try it out. I also did a quick turn and fell edge of the cuff. Because of the way the gores are placed, with bias edge to straight edge to prevent too much stretching, there is a bit of excess fabric causing an uneven hem. I laid out the kirtle and did a quick trim to mostly even things out, before hanging up the kirtle for a few days just to help get any last bit of bias stretch out. Then I used my yardstick to measure from the floor to the bottom edge so that everything would be even all the way around. Then the sleeves got sewn in with little back stitches. The beauty of hand sewing is that you can take a project wherever you go, whether it's a train commute or an autumn vacation to the cottage. Once home, I marked a quick half-inch hem all the way around and folded twice to make a 1-inch hem, and felled it into place. At this point, it is completely wearable and technically complete. However, I wanted to add a little something more to help push the history-bounding fantasy element, and that is a little bit of embroidery. I knew right from the get-go in the planning stages of this project that I wanted some kind of floralish greenery trim up both sides of the lacing, and I ended up going all the way around the collar edge too. For the base vine, I used a worsted wool thread and couched it in place with a silk thread. And I used a disconnected chain stitch to add little leaves all the way around, this time using the wool and silk threads doubled together for some variation. I had thought about adding some flowers as well, but I kind of stink at doing those stitches, and it really does look cute as it is. So I declared this project officially finished. Well, this was quite a journey to get this dress finished. I started it back in early July. It was supposed to be my new light summer dress, and I finished it October 10th. There were quite a few hiccups along the way, as you saw, but it ended up super cute, and I love it. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more Geekery Meets History sewing adventures, please hit the subscribe button and stick around. And if you feel like supporting this channel to help me continue making more fun projects like this, I have a Ko-fi account, and my channel was just accepted into the YouTube Partner Program, so I have the ability to accept super thanks if you don't feel like leaving YouTube. I am so grateful to everyone who has joined my little corner of the internet recently. This has been such a fun adventure so far, and I look forward to many more adventures down the road. Onward, friends!
Come back to me. So graceful.
And I originally thought it might.
So graceful. No, I'm not. This was supposed to be a summer dress. It's not made for October. Finish your projects on time. It's cold. I'm gonna go get some tea.